FSBO Authority. FSBO Authority.
The For Sale by Owner podcast, found on iTunes, YouTube, and the FSBOauthority.com. And now, here's the FSBO Authority, Ernie Emad.
Welcome to the relaunch of the For Sale by Owner Authority, your how to master the art of prospecting for sale by owners weekly podcast. I'm Ernie Emad, a 22-year real estate industry FSBO expert, sharing my insights and strategies to help you excel in this niche market. Each week, I delve into my proven techniques for identifying and connecting with FSBO prospects, overcoming objections with confidence and finesse while building lasting relationships. I will also keep you informed and updated with the latest NAR settlement news from a listing agent's perspective. So whether you're a seasoned agent looking to sharpen your skills or a newcomer eager to learn, this podcast is designed to provide you with the tools and knowledge you need to succeed. Buyer agents, you have your work cut out. Once you cover the NAR settlement with your buyers and begin to hunt them down, then chase them down, only to see them run further and further away, leaving you frustrated and broke. Start feeling like this and not this, and begin to count your fortunes as listing agents with the FSBO Edge Workshop. For more information, visit FSBOEdge.com. I'm excited to announce my new live For Sale by Owner prospecting workshops, FSBO Edge, where I bring these strategies to life in a live, immersive, and interactive hands-on workshop featuring live cold calling with real-time objection handling and feedback. These workshops are designed to give you an edge in this highly misunderstood but very lucrative FSBO market. You'll learn practical skills that can be applied immediately to begin scheduling listing appointments from day one. Visit FSBOEdge.com for more information. So if you're ready to master your FSBO market, let's dive in and get started with today's episode. Welcome to the NARly NAR settlement from a listing agent's perspective on this week's FSBO Authority podcast that starts now. Look, there's plenty of anxiety going around these days, especially if you're a buyer agent. And by that, I mean that most of your business came from working with buyers. Well, this significant rule change will affect the way you'll be compensated moving forward. So you'll want to stay around to watch and listen to this program as I delve into these changes, but from a listing agent's perspective. Much of the conversation has centered on the buyer agent changes and strategies included but not limited to how they will get compensated moving forward. And as I hear, watch, and participate in these conversations across the state, buyer agents still want to incorporate the way business was to how business is post-August 17th. What are your comments? Already, the power to negotiate realtor commissions have shifted away from agents in favor of buyers and sellers. And as I mentioned from the start, this podcast is about the listing agent's perspective. You may have heard that many companies have announced moving forward they will no longer share their listing compensations with buyer agents. So to look at the NAR settlement, the main changes are for the buyer agent and how they will work with buyers moving forward. Now, by the time you finish watching this program, you'll have a clear path forward and the action plan I will spell out for you. By the way, if you're getting any value from this type of content, like, subscribe, and click the notification bell, as this helps me as I help you. So the rules have been established. Agree with them or not. Now let's play the game. Show me clear rules and let's make it happen. I've always embraced change since that's the only constant in our lives. It's clear that when you take a look at the facts.realtor site, there's plenty of reference to the mention of client. We know what a client is, not the loosely used terminology we refer to as our customers. When we use client, you have fiduciary responsibilities to that client, and you've established a single agency relationship. Other agency relationships, at least in the state of Florida, include transaction brokers determining their customer title. Now that you've been reminded what a client is, let's move on to the next step. NAR and the DOJ have decoupled compensation. Each side will be paid by their client or customer. As I previously mentioned, we have already seen national major real estate firms going public about not sharing their listing compensations with buyer agents. So again, here it is from a listing agent's perspective. Prior to the NAR settlement, listing brokers were required to offer compensations from their listing commissions as a rule for that listing to appear across those platforms. Ask yourself this: if listing agents were not required to share their commissions in order for that listing to be entered into the MLS, how many agents would have offered any or much lower commission sharing? Listing agents moving forward will only negotiate their listing side compensation. No longer do they have to negotiate another agent's compensation to get a listing. I've spent 22 years prospecting for sale by owners and don't work buyers, but as did taxi drivers that got a bad rap for their service, and Uber came in and snatched a huge percentage of their business, so is happening in real estate. A listing agent is always prospecting sellers, investing money in systems, farming, telephone calls, spending money to market those listings, hold open houses, and I can go on and on. And largely, the consumers now find their own properties. Then the agent goes on Showtime, schedules an appointment, and 10 minutes before the showing, the listing agent gets a call. The buyer's at the property and they can't make it. Have you ever had that happen to you? Now, for those buyer agents that have demonstrated their worth in prior transactions through the service they provided their buyers in the past, then you'll have no problem articulating your value and get paid for it. This entire settlement is pro-consumer. Sellers will save money and buyers will be able to negotiate their commissions up front and save money as well. What will you do moving forward? How will you decide to work your business? A recent study found that 1/3 of real estate agents are estimated to leave the business. Will you be one of the surviving ones? So answer this question. Will a buyer pay you more or less than a seller was accustomed to offering? Look, I hear agents say that they will incorporate their buyer broker compensation in the offer. And absolutely, that is one way of you showing your buyer that you will negotiate to have the fee they've agreed to pay you reduced or eliminated. However, keep this in mind. By all indications, the amount you will be able to negotiate with buyers will be less than sellers were accustomed to offering in the past. And now, the Consumer Federation of America also tells consumers not to agree to pay an agent just to see a home, but to sign a touring agreement with no financial obligation instead and offer 2% or less moving forward. So back to negotiating your fee. Will the seller pay you for the services you are not providing them, but providing the buyer who is negotiating against the seller? Yes, the fee you want to collect for representing someone else. Look, recently on Yahoo Finance, Barbara Corcoran was being interviewed regarding this very subject. And she goes on to say, sellers are greedy. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make the most amount of money, and they're not going to pass the savings on to the buyer. Let's say you're a seller. Selling your home can save you 3% with this new ruling. And you say to your listing broker, I don't want to pay the buyer's broker the extra 3%. They're not going to give that money away. Remember that most sellers are buyers, and sellers will have to negotiate with their listing agent or a buyer agent a fee to purchase a property. And they may end up paying an agent compensation if the house they choose does not have any offer of concessions or compensation. No one wants to have to pay 3 commissions on 2 transactions. And that's exactly what will happen if a seller offers compensation to a buyer representative on their sale and the home they want to purchase does not. Look, it's tough enough to get listings, and now listing agents can give themselves a raise and negotiate a higher compensation by acting in a fiduciary capacity, which will be a welcome sight to many sellers. So what's next? Let me spell out one clear path forward. Learn to specialize in a niche market like FSBOs. We now know that listing agents will first negotiate the highest possible compensation for their listing side. Then they will explain to their sellers the other options they have regarding buyer concessions and possible offers of compensation to buyer agents. Well, those compensations are going to be clearly articulated to those sellers that they may come in a way of an offer. But the new rule is clear. Buyer agents need to get paid by their buyers. A recent DOJ release clearly shows their direction of decoupling compensation and don't want to see compensation to a buyer broker at all. So that's where my new FSBO Edge workshops can be a solution for you and your brokerage that you should consider. As a listing agent, buyers will eventually come to you without any chasing, especially with these new rules. However, it's clear now that working with buyers will be a lot harder and for less money. And even with the length of time that you can work with a buyer being questioned and regulated as well, learning to be an effective listing agent will have the greatest return and reward for your time. And on our next podcast, I will clearly entertain you with a walkthrough of all the steps that buyer agents are doing across the country, what is working and what's definitely not when it comes to securing a satisfactory buyer agreement. I don't want you to make those mistakes that are happening across the country when you approach these buyers. I will also cover the news out of California, and the legislature is considering a 3-month term limit on buyer agreements, all while consumer watchdogs advocate for you to make much less, 2% or less, and not to sign any binding touring agreement. So tell me, what do you think about this? Leave me your comments. So for my final comment, almost everyone wins. Sellers win as they will pay less. Buyers win because they will pay less, and listing agents win because they will earn more per transactions. So who doesn't win? Buyer agents. They get the short end of this stick. Remember, you must list to last, my friends. Thank you for joining the FSBO Authority podcast. I'm Ernie Emad, the FSBO Authority, founder and trainer of the FSBO Edge workshops. Take care.
We've come to the end of another For Sale by Owner Authority podcast with your host and FSBO Authority, Ernie Emad. I hope you feel armed and informed. The For Sale by Owner Authority podcast can be found on iTunes and YouTube as a video, as well as our Facebook page and on the FSBOauthority.com.